Hey, it's the Ray Rican, and today, what's been the talk all week, but what's going on in Cuba and the responses to what's going on in Cuba. And of course, the head of the squad, AOC, she comes out and, of course, has to, mirror Black Lives Matter and uh, basically blame the U.S. for what's going on in Cuba, not only um, with the poverty, but anyway, let me just read her statement so we can see. We are seeing Cubans rise up and protest for their rights like never before. We stand in solidarity with them. We condemn the anti-democratic actions led by President Diaz Canel. The suppression of the media, speech, and protest are gross violations of civil rights. We must also we also must name the U.S. contribution to Cuban suffering over 60-year embargo, she continued. Last month, once again, the UN voted overwhelming to call on the U.S. to lift its embargo on Cuba. The embargo is absurdly cruel, and like too many other U.S. policies targeting Latin Americans, the cruelty is the point. I swear, it's so embarrassing that she's Puerto Rican. I'm the right Rican and she's the far left Rican. The outright I outright reject the Biden's administration's defense of the embargo. It's never acceptable for us to see cruelty as a point of leverage against everyday people. It's not cruelty against the people, you idiot. It's cruel. It's the regime is what causes the suffering because they don't allow. Anyway, I'm gonna go into what's going. I did this noise. Here it goes. I mean, you compare that to obviously to a Cuban in Florida, and it goes here. The U.S. is the largest provider of food to Cuba, and each year sends $270 million in medicine and $3 billion in remittance to relatives. The suffering in Cuba isn't because of an embargo, it's because socialism always leads to suffering. So, like I said, you just can compare it to uh, basically what Black Lives Matter said, and of course they want to blame the U.S. and that's the whole thing about these people who can't stand this country. They want to blame it on the country. Well, the here's Reason Magazine talking about this. It goes, the trade embargo allows Cuba's regime to blame the U.S. for communism's failings. And it goes here, the words of the support for the anti-communist protesters, some of whom waved Americans' flags as they demanded freedom, are good, but actions would be better. Biden should call on Congress to lift the U.S. decades trade embargo with Cuba. Which is funny, this is libertarians, because libertarians want uh, libertarians want freedom. It's like they just want free trade and all that. Where I would prefer free trade, but at the same time, we have to be realistic. What has free trade got us with China? All free trade with China has done is make them exploit our weaknesses. Hasn't caused any type of revolution in China. Uh, so all it does is enrich the party, and that's what would happen if we opened up. If we ended the embargo in Cuba, would be we would further enrich the party members. It wouldn't trickle down, so to speak. But you look at what happened. He goes here when the Obama administration loosened some of the rules, banning Americans from traveling to Cuba as part of an effort to establish Now, traveling to Cuba, I think we should. I don't think that should be something that should be banned. We should be able to. Americans should be able to go to Cuba. If we want to go to Cuba, it should be fine. Especially that we could go there, help, buy our tourism, help create like a black market for stuff there, which would put pressure on the government. But to just outright open with trade with Cuba, I don't know. But if you want, you could read the Reason magazine article. But what's going on in Cuba right now, they're cracking down on the protesters. They're basically they're arresting journalists who report on it. It happened live on Spanish from Spain, Spain news station, uh, that a reporter was actually arrested while she was reporting. Another thing that's going on in Cuba is basically they're blacking out the internet. There's an internet blackout. Is the country's latest attempt to quiet protest, and this is what these communist sympathizers, these far leftists, they don't understand is the authoritarianism that's ingrained in communism and Marxism. It's not um it's not a consequence. It's a consequence of it. It's not something that happens in a vacuum. It happens all the time. In order to have real communism, you need to force it on people. You cannot have it by choice. I mean, you can have it by choice, but once you taste it, you don't want it, and forget it. That's it. You cannot vote your way out of you can't vote your way out of Marxism. And this is the stuff that they pull off. They either they have blackouts, they'll force the government, the government will force companies to um basically silence the opponents, you know. But hey, who are we to complain about that? Because what's going on right now? Well, you know what? Before I go in, well, no, let me go into that because then I'll end with that other part here. Here's some interesting points. It goes here. The embargo is not responsible for prohibiting fishermen from fishing. The dictatorship is. The embargo is not responsible for confiscating what the farmers harvest. The dictatorship is. The embargo is not responsible for prohibiting Cubans on the island from doing business freely. The dictatorship is. The embargo is not responsible for destroying every sugar mill, textile factory, shoe store, canning factory. The dictatorship is. The embargo is not responsible for Cubans being paid in Cuban pesos while the regime sells everything in stores with American dollars. The dictatorship is. The embargo is not responsible for Cubans being beaten and imprisoned for thinking differently. The dictatorship is. The embargo is not responsible for sentencing hundreds of political prisoners who have not committed any crime. The dictatorship is. The embargo was not responsible that while people outside the island were sending American dollars to their Cuban relatives through Western Union, yet the regime exchanged them for the worthless Cuban convertible pesos. The dictatorship is. The embargo is not responsible that the dictatorship builds hotels while the roof of Cubans fall upon their heads. And that's the whole thing. These are things that, regardless of an embargo, they would be able to do, but they don't. They stuff it in their pockets. It's just kind of like it's like Hugo Chavez and Maduro now in Venezuela. Hugo Chavez died rich, and Maduro, while his people are starving, is fat. So, but hopefully, here's another statement. I saw this meme. It says here, "La culebra se mata por la cabeza," which means the snake is killed by removing its head. And that's, I guess, say that's the hope that once Cuba goes goes into the history bin of communism, that it'll follow the rest of it'll follow the rest of the countries. I'm assuming this is Venezuela and this is Nicaragua. So yeah, there you go. But that's these lefties. They want that here. And like I said, they hate this country so much they want to blame it what's the suffering of the people there on us, because we don't want to trade with them. It's like, we don't have to trade with them. That's, if we don't want to trade with them, we don't because we don't want to enrich the Cuban government. It's not about the people, because if we send food and we send medicine and we send money, we just won't trade with them. That's it. They have all this money. They could build up they take from their citizens by converting that money. Why don't they use it? Why don't they build new hospitals and all that stuff? They have resources on the island, but they don't. And they have trading partners like Iran and stuff like that, that they trade with. They trade with Venezuela. So it's not like there's a complete embargo with them. It doesn't allow there's other countries that we don't trade with that they could trade with. But it's not a surprise that when a regime goes far left like that, that they want to censor, because it's happening here. Just Google this. Look, Biden administration telling Facebook to take down misinformation. And this is funny, where you could see the difference. There's a difference in framing when it comes to these two, when it comes to the two stories. The White House isn't letting Facebook off the hook for allowing misinformation to spread on its platforms. This is basically approving of this headline is basically approving of the White House not letting Facebook off the hook for allowing misinformation. If the White House is forcing or putting pressure on Facebook to censor speech, then Facebook is not a private company, but a government actor. Because if you're censoring speech on behalf of the Biden administration, then that is not, you're no longer a private company. Even though you may be a private company, China has private companies that act on behalf of the state. And that's what would be going on here. Facebook and other social media companies that would give in to the pressure are basically state actors. Because you can't have, the government cannot force you to, it's not supposed to take away your free speech, but they're trying to get around it by getting the social media companies to do it. And here's the difference in framing, where it goes, White House flagging posts for Facebook to censor over COVID misinformation, which I still think this is kind of light, because it's still this this headline is letting Facebook off the hook, and also letting the kind of, like I said, to me it's too light, but that's what's going on. So when you see just take it all the way from, these people blaming the country to moving it all the way here, where the Cuba is getting their internet taken out, so like that they can't share with the world what's going on in Cuba. But that's what totalitarian regimes do. They silence dissent, and they stifle free speech. And that's what, you see what's going on here with the Biden administration trying to basically pressure Facebook. But here's the problem with that. You can't, like I said, Facebook is becoming a state actor. But if we allow this stuff to go on, then where does it stop? Does it, there was the story about where it's going to spread into text messages, where we can't share text messages. You have to ask yourself, where does it end? So if you look at what's going on here, how would we have gotten, let's say, the lab leak theory out, and they try to stop it? They flagged it and stuff. I mean, I got in trouble on Facebook, but from posting a clip from Tucker Carlson, and it's finally lifted, but still, it took like like 6 to 8 months before that changed on my profile. But that's the way it's working. That's how it goes. um Look what happened during the election season when the New York Post reported about the Hunter Biden laptop. What did they do? All the social media companies banned it. Why? Oh, they gave their BS reasons, but what's the real reason why they banned it? They didn't want people to hear the story, because the average person would have been influenced by that. The average person, if that doesn't happen, the average person would either have not voted, because they would have either hated Trump so much they would have not voted for him either. They would have just voted third party, or they would have not voted at all. Or there would have been people that would have been that maybe people that were on the fence, that they're like, oh, I don't like Trump, but I don't, I'm not a huge fan of Biden, but lesser of two evils. But then if the Hunter Biden's laptop story would have been able to come out, then you would have been able to go, oh wait, this guy's going to bring corruption to the White House also. He's already done it as vice president. What's gonna, his family's going to get even more enriched as president. I mean, look at Hunter Biden selling art. Uh, put art in quotation marks, where he's selling pieces for 500,000. He's selling a piece. I remember reading that a Pablo Picasso piece went for like $175,000, and the low end of Hunter Biden's art pieces are going at 150. Like, are you serious? You're gonna tell me that a Hunter Biden is more expensive than a Pablo Picasso? It's ridiculous. But this is how the Bidens get around. This is how the Bidens are trying to get around the corruption right now, because they're going to know who paid for these. They're going to know who paid for these pieces. They're saying, oh, well, we're going to do blind selling. Bullshit. Don't pee on my leg and tell me it's raining. What's going to go on? They're going to buy it. They're going to have the piece and go, hey, yeah, we paid $1 million for this piece. So like that, we could have access to you. They'll throw it in their face. Let's not be, let's not be naive. But this is what passes. This is what passes for news, and this is why, at the end of the day, doesn't matter what side you on, you cannot be okay with censorship and banning stuff. Because look, as much as I was against the news that was reported on Trump, all the leaks and all the fake stories. But you know what? We had a side to contend against that. Now, if you didn't want to believe it, then that's on you. But at the same time, I'm not calling for their censorship. But if you're calling for, people who, let's say, are against the vaccine, censoring people online is not going to stop people from, it's not going to, make people want to get the vaccine all of a sudden. But that's what they're doing. So anyways, I'm gonna leave it there. I'm gonna yeah, I'll share something personal probably on Monday. Just got some stuff going on in the background that this week has been a hard week to do videos, just because my mind and heart hasn't been into it. Um, you'll understand more. Probably come clean with what's going on at once. Well, I'll find out later today. That's why I did the video early today, so like that I could have a clearer mind than I probably will later. So just prayers for my family. Just um, going through typical stuff in life that happens as people age. So I'll leave it there. You can follow me on. I post these videos on YouTube and Rumble. You can follow me on both. I appreciate it. Um, Not ceding the ground to the left on YouTube. And same thing. I mean, I post. I'm on social media. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Gab. I'm on Telegram. Um, and I post my videos there. Sometimes I'll post comments that I see from other people I follow. So You can follow me on those platforms as well. With that being said, have a good one, everyone.